You're sitting on the train from Norden to Norderney, and the North Sea coast stretches beside you. You notice a woman who isn't young, but who's alive. Her eyes are green as the sea, her hair has turned gray, her arms are muscular and brown. She wears practical clothes, and in her bag are gloves, a spade, and small plant pots. This is Greta, and she's the Dune Warden of Norderney. She's looked after the dunes for 40 years. The dunes are a world unto themselves. They're not just sand. They're a system of life and death, of disappearance and rebuilding. Beneath the sand live thousands of organisms. Above the sand grow specialized plants that thrive in salt water and hold the soil together with their roots. The dunes are like the lungs of the island. They protect the town from the winter storms. Greta spends much of her time walking the dunes. She checks whether the grass cover is thick enough. She looks for signs of overgrazing or erosion. She plants new marram grass, what it's called locally, at spots where the sand is starting to shift. Marram grass is robust. It can cope with little water, and its roots run deep and firm. A single marram grass plant can stabilize an entire dune. The work is really voluntary. Greta isn't paid for it, or if she is, then only symbolically. She does this work because the dunes are part of herself. Her parents were also dune wardens, her grandparents too. This is a family of people who understand that their lives are woven together with the lives of the dunes. The dunes aren't still. They change constantly. After every storm, they're different. The sand shifts. Sometimes the shoreline erodes by meters in a single winter. Sometimes it grows back out. Greta documents these changes. She has hundreds of photographs, all taken from the same spot, all 10 years in a row. With these photos, she can see how the beach develops. There are stories in the dunes, too. Greta has found old coins, centuries old. She's found bones of birds, of fish, of long-dead creatures. Once, she found a silver ring, and she spent months trying to work out who it belonged to. She found an old woman who'd left the island during the war. The ring was hers. They both wept when Greta gave it back. Greta is also a wildlife watcher. The dunes are home to rare plants and animals. Certain insects live only here. Certain birds nest only in these dunes. Greta has learned to recognize and protect these species. She works with the conservation department. She leads school groups out onto the dunes and shows the children the wonders of this system. Every autumn, when summer comes to an end, the island's people gather to pay attention to the dunes. They bring plants, tools, and time. Greta leads these efforts. She divides the people into groups. She shows them how to plant, how to remove weeds, how to protect the young plants. It's like a ritual, a promise to the island that they'll look after it. In the winter storms, the work becomes hard. The winds on Norderney can be terrible, winds that blow at 100 kilometers an hour. Greta has to check that the dunes aren't eroding too badly. She has to take emergency measures. She brings wood to support the grass. She brings mats to hold the sand. She often works in rain and snow. Greta has also written a book, a modest little book with her photos and her observations. It hasn't had many sales, but it's read in the island library. Tourists find it sometimes and say later, "I read the book about the Dune Warden. That was so moving." Greta always replies, "That was me. I'm still here." There are other dune wardens along the North Sea coast, on Sylt, on Föhr, on Amrum. Greta sometimes meets with them and they exchange tips. They talk about the latest methods, about which plant species work best, about their experiences with the authorities. But there's also a quiet rivalry between them. Each thinks their dunes are the most beautiful. The young people on the island don't know who Greta is, but the old ones, those who've lived here a long time, greet her with respect. They know that without Greta, the island would be lost. Without her hands, her eyes, her mind, her patience, the North Sea would long since have destroyed the dunes. Sometimes, at night, when Greta's at home and hears the storm howling round the house, she thinks about the dunes. She imagines how they rear up in the wind, how the grass bends back and forth, how the sand whirls up. She can't sleep, so she gets up, makes herself a cup of tea, and looks out the window towards the dunes. She knows the dunes will hold. She's made sure of that. Greta has never married. She's never had children. Her life belongs to the dunes. She doesn't think she's given anything up. Rather, she thinks she's received everything. A purpose, a family, a home, love. The dunes are her children. Every blade of marram grass is like her own creation. Sometimes, on warm spring days, when the sun hangs high in the sky and the birds sing, Greta simply sits on the dunes and looks out to sea. She thinks about infinity, about the millions of years before she was here and the millions of years after her. And she knows that her work is small on the great cosmic scale, but it's her work, and it's important, and that's all that matters. The tourists who come to Norderney see the dunes and think they're natural, that they sustain themselves. They don't know that behind this beauty, behind this seeming simplicity, lies decades of work. They don't see Greta on the dunes, day after day, hour after hour, planting marram grass and waiting. During the train journey to Norderney, Greta tells other passengers about her work, not because she seeks recognition, but because she hopes people will understand how important the dunes are. She speaks of the importance of nature, of the importance of looking after the places we love. She speaks with a passion that's contagious. She knows that climate change threatens the dunes. Sea levels are rising, storms are intensifying, erosion is speeding up. Greta has seen this with her own eyes over recent decades. But she doesn't give up. When everything says it's impossible, she just works harder. She sows more seeds. She plants more grass. She prays when no one's watching, and then she works on. As the train pulls into Norderney and Greta rises, you close your eyes. You see the dunes before you in all seasons. You see them golden in the sun, gray in the rain, white in snow. You see a woman with gloves and spade setting small green plants in the sand, one after another. You see these tiny plants grow and strengthen, their roots going deep, becoming a force that can stand against the North Sea winds. And you understand that this is real magic, not the magic of wands and spells, but the magic of patience and love. And the landscape outside grew softer. The shapes of the trees dissolved. The fields became dark patches across which the moon sometimes let its pale light glide. I felt my breathing slow, felt my heart slow, felt my whole body sink downward into the warm embrace of the seat cushion, into the warm embrace of this train carrying me, asking nothing of me but that I trust and rest. That was a good feeling, a rare feeling, to be carried along without effort, simply to trust that the wheels would keep turning, that the rails would keep leading on, that morning would come eventually. The train rolled on gently, and outside the world was now completely dark. Just a few lights in the distance, single windows where other people too were coming to rest. I thought about how many people at that moment around the world were falling asleep, each in their bed, their compartment, their room, and how we were all part of a great, quiet movement, a movement into sleep. The rhythm of the wheels on the rails, clack, 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 was like the breathing of a great, friendly animal carrying us all together through the darkness, through time. On the Dresden to Leipzig line, in summer, I met a woman who looked out the window as though she were seeing something altogether different from the flat Saxon landscape that glided past like an endless reminder of loss. Young still, perhaps 60, with gray hair pinned in a knot, not untidy, mind you, but with a certain desperation, as if she'd stopped bothering with order. Her eyes were blue and far-sighted, the kind that measure distances, that try to see beyond the flatness into something else entirely. She sat across from me and didn't look straight out the window. No, she looked through it, through the landscape beyond, into another time, another land, as though she could see through space and time itself, as though she held the key to a gate only she could see. "It's flat," she said to me, not as a question, but as a lament. "Too flat, too wide, too little depth. This isn't right." I asked her where she was from. "The mountains," she said, and her face brightened for a moment before sorrow closed in again, like cloud shadow over a peak. "From Salzburg, Austria. My whole life was mountains. The Untersberg, the Hohe Göhl, the Untersberg. He was like a friend, you understand? I knew where I was simply by looking out and seeing him. I was never lost, never alone, because the mountain was always there, with me, for me. But my husband, he had to be here, his engineering work, building dams, long and cruel dams that destroyed the land. And I loved him, so I came. And now I cannot leave, too old to start again, too alone. The body is tired, the heart is too tired to lose another home." She told me of her mountains with the intensity of someone describing paradise itself. Of mornings when you looked from the window and saw the mountains, not merely saw them, but saw them the way one sees one's own body, as though they were part of yourself. The air, thin and clear as crystal, the firs so green and ancient. The colors, they were different here, entirely different, because mountains change the light, break it apart, and reassemble it. "Here everything is brown and gray," she said. "Even in summer it's flat and enormous. It's like swimming in an ocean, but the ocean is air instead of water. Here I am lost." She had a photograph, showed it to me, an old one, worn by countless glances, the corners bent from being taken from her bag again and again. A mountain crowned in snow, forest beneath it, dark green and deep as a secret, and a village with little houses, their roofs red as blood, as life. "That is home," she said. "That is the place where my heart was born. I cannot replace it. I tried. There are houses here, streets, people too. But it's all wrong. It's the same language, but with the wrong accent." And I saw tears in her eyes, though she wasn't weeping. The tears were simply, they were like morning dew, there, but they wouldn't fall. Suspended, caught, like her heart hanging between two mountains. "Her husband is dead now," she said. 3 years ago. And I could go. The children are grown. I have savings. But it's too late. I've lived here too long. The body is old. The legs are tired. And besides, the mountains, they don't wait. If I go now, I'll be a visitor, not a daughter. I don't belong to the mountains anymore. The mountains have forgotten me." She let the photograph fall, and it slipped down between the seats, vanished into the darkness beneath where so many lost things go. She made no move to retrieve it, as though the photo had done its work, had brought the past out into the open, had witnessed her sorrow, and now it could fall into that darkness between the seats, where it would likely remain forever, trapped between Dresden and Leipzig, suspended between two worlds. "I dream of them," she said, "every night. I see the mountains and I'm in them, young perhaps, 30 years old, And it's summer, and I'm cycling through the mountains, and it smells of firs and grass and snow. Yes, even in summer it smells of snow there, because the snow never truly leaves. It's only buried beneath the flowers, beneath the earth, waiting for winter. And then I wake, and it's flat. It's dark, it's gray, it's not Austria. Austria is a dream, and I am a ghost inhabiting that dream. She got out at Leipzig without turning round, as though she couldn't bear the farewell, couldn't bear to see the mountains, even in memory, one more time. She stood, slowly, reluctant, as though her body disagreed with what her mind had decided. She reached for her suitcase, a brown one, old, with stickers from travels that never went to the mountains. And as she left, she didn't look back. That is the exile's ritual, not to look back, because if you look back, you see everything you've lost. Her homesickness was vast, so vast it fills a room, fills a person, becomes the person herself. And I sat there thinking, home is not merely a place. Home is a feeling that doesn't change no matter where you are. Home is also a dream you dream each night. Home is also a pain that doesn't heal because you won't accept that you had to go. And when you lose your home, you lose more than a place. You lose the language of your soul. You lose the way you understand yourself. The train carried on, the flat landscape rolling past, endless, never-ending, without mountain, without depth. And somewhere on another train, or perhaps this very one, a woman travels who sees the mountains only in her dreams. And each night she drifts there, to the mountains, to home, to the life that might have been. And she will never truly return, not in body. That's the tragedy, not the loss of home itself, but the possibility of visiting it, yet the inability to belong there. Because when you're away too long, when you grow too old, when you've lived too much elsewhere, then home is no longer your place. It's only a dream, a phantom, a memory that cannot become real. And I sat on this train and felt the weight of her sorrow, her homesickness, so vast it thickened the air, made it heavier, made the windows fog with her grief. And I thought of mountains, of places we love, that we cannot let go, that are anchored in our bones, that run in our blood, that are the language of our soul. And I know there are millions like her, people exiled not by tyrants, but by time, by the choices of others, by love for someone who didn't belong there. And I drifted away, deeper down, into the mountains, the home that exists only in dreams, that becomes real only at night, where the mountains are eternal, where home waits, patient, forever, where the soul is always at rest, always beloved. The train travels through the Kitzbüheler Alps on the line from Kitzbühel to St. Johann, and it's snowing. It's not snowing dramatically, but gently, continuously, as if the world itself were breathing in and out. The flakes fall on the window and melt at once, leaving small rivulets like tears of joy. And through the glass I see out to the white slopes, the ski lifts, the black dots of skiers far below, looking like tiny beetles crawling over an enormous white cloth. The mountains were still, majestic, knowing. The man beside me is also looking out. He's old, older than me, probably. His hands are large and wrinkled, but they're not weak. They're the hands of someone who worked his whole life, who'd played on snow thousands of times. He wears a blue jumper with a little snow still clinging to it, as if he's just come in from outside. His eyes are blue like the sky over the mountains, and they look out with a mixture of nostalgia and gratitude. I ask him if he's a skier. He smiles, a smile that tells old stories. Was, he says. For 40 years I was a ski instructor on this mountain. These slopes, I know them like my own hands. Every bump, every stone under the snow, every place where the beginners would fall. And he lifts a hand, looks at it, looks at the lines in his skin, as if he were seeing the slopes in his palm. My hands, they corrected thousands of children. A bit more left, a bit less right. Your body must be like this, not like that. Trust the mountain, not the fear. And then he tells me of his time, of the beginners who were afraid, who trembled, who wanted to cry, of the rich people from Vienna and Munich who came only on weekends, who always wanted to ski faster than they could, of the children who could ski like professionals after 3 days, the fast ones, the ones with no fear, who loved nature. I didn't just teach them to ski, he says. I also taught them not to be afraid of the mountain. The mountain isn't evil. It's large, and you must respect it. And if you respect it, then it respects you too. It's like a marriage. Respect is the basis. I ask him when he stopped. 2 years ago, he says. My legs aren't young anymore. The knees, they hurt in the morning. The back, not young either. I tried to teach, but I couldn't ski fast anymore. The students, they didn't trust a teacher who was slower than them, so I stopped. It was hard, but I still come up sometimes to see how the new instructors do it, to see how the skis have become faster, how the techniques have changed, but how the mountains are still the same. He looks out at the snow-covered slopes with an intensity as if he were seeing the faces of all his old students there. This is still my mountain. This will always be my mountain, even if I can't ski anymore. The snow continues to fall, and I imagine how this man, for 40 years, was on the mountain every day. How he saw the techniques change, how people changed, but the mountain always remained the same. A life long and devoted to a single place. 40,000 days on the same mountain. 40,000 times he went up. 40,000 students maybe, or more. And every single one of them, they trusted him with their bodies, with their fear, with their desire to dominate the mountain, or even just to respect it. And now? I ask him before he gets off. Now, when you don't teach anymore, what do? He looks at me, and his gaze is deep, thoughtful. Now I still ski, but alone, without students, and it's different, it's quieter. Sometimes I think I miss the voices of the students, their questions, their fear. But sometimes the silence is also beautiful. The mountain and I, we're not teacher and student anymore. We're old friends. We sit together and are silent and understand each other. The most beautiful moments, he says, weren't the big ones, but the small ones. A child making a turn for the first time, making it right, without fear, with trust, with freedom. In that moment, the child's body, it changes. The fear goes away, and what remains? That's joy, pure joy, and I'm there. I'm part of this transformation, and I experienced it 1,000 times, and every time it was new. It was a birthday every time. A new person who, defying fear, steps into freedom. And I got to be the midwife. I got to help with this birth. His eyes become wet, but he's not crying. It's just the memory that overwhelms him. A life full of gratitude. He gets off at St. Johann, slowly, carefully, reaches for the handrail as if holding an old friend. I'm going to my grandson, he says. He's a ski instructor on another mountain. Not as beautiful as this one, but he's young and he loves it. Maybe he'll show me how modern techniques are, how technology has changed training. And maybe I'll show him that the most important thing isn't technique, but love for the mountain, patience with beginners, the way to turn fear into trust. You can't learn that from a video. You can only learn that from an old teacher who gave everything. And he smiles, but it's a smile that's also a little sad, because times change and you can't simply pass on your whole soul, your whole way of life to a child. But you try anyway. I watch him go, step by step, into the snow, a small red suitcase behind him, weathered, as if it didn't need much space in the world. His steps are slow, but sure, the steps of a man who knows where he stands, who understands the terrain beneath his feet. And I think, this is a life. A life lived in one place with people who came and went, hundreds of people, thousands of moments, all together a great mosaic. A life not measured by success in medals or championships, but by constancy, by faithfulness, by love for a mountain, by the ability to teach people that fear isn't stronger than love, that you don't have to fight nature, you just have to follow it, and it will give you everything. The train travels on. The snow falls, gently, continuously, like the days of a long life. And somewhere on the mountain, in some classroom of nature, a new ski instructor teaches a beginner who trembles, who's afraid. And this old man sits at home in St. Johann and remembers the years and the thousands of turns, the thousands of happy moments when a person overcame fear and is content, knows that his life wasn't wasted, knows that somewhere all over the Alps, men and women ski whom he taught. And they may not think of him anymore, but his hand is still in their movements, in their safety on the mountains. And I drift away, down smooth slopes, where the wind speaks gently, where the turns are endless, and an old teacher sits at the top, looks down, smiles, knows that his life was a work of art of patience and love. You sit on the train from Bremerhaven to Bremen, and it's dusk. An older woman with a red headscarf sits across from you. She wears a blue cotton dress and a green waistcoat. On her feet are sturdy boots, their soles stained with fish and seaweed. The air around her is sharp and savory, the aroma of smoked fish, salt, and sea. This is Ingrid, and for 46 years she has sold fish at the Bremerhaven Harbor Market. Ingrid gets up at 5 in the morning at the market, and she'll be there until the last customer is gone, usually sometime between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. She sells fresh fish, mackerel, cod, herring, plaice, pollock, all bought from the trawler, all caught the same day. The fish, when it comes to her, is still warm from the work. She packs it in ice, keeps it fresh, and waits for customers. Her stall is well known. Everyone in Bremerhaven knows Ingrid's stall. It's not the biggest stall. She competes with large fish sellers who have modern shelving and lighting. But Ingrid's stall has something money can't buy. It has history. It has love. It has the scent of truth. She begins her day by setting up the stall. She pushes the long wooden counter from the warehouse. She stacks the ice. She arranges the fish on damp paper with ice underneath and above. She organizes her tools, the long knives, the scales, the wrapping papers. She hangs up her little board. The handwriting is old, but the prices are current. 3 Hennemans sometimes helps her youngest son, who brings them sometimes before going to work. The harbor market is full of voices. There are shouts from other sellers hawking their wares. There's the sound of money, of bags, of wheels rolling over cobblestone. But Ingrid's stall is quiet. She doesn't speak loudly, she doesn't shout. She simply says good morning to every customer, and they know they should come to her. The regular customers are her favorite customers. Frau Böhme comes every Tuesday and buys a kilo of herrings. For her cat, she says. But Ingrid knows she likes herrings herself. Herr Schäfer comes Fridays and always asks for place. He wants exactly 3 pieces, no more, no less. The young mother with the baby in the pram comes twice a week. She buys small portions of pollock to give the child. Ingrid knows the best way to prepare each fish. She can fillet a cod with 3 knife strokes. She can bone a herring in seconds. She can look at a fish and tell how long it's been caught, how it's been treated, whether it will be good when cooked. This knowledge isn't in books. It's in her hands. She has learned that life is short. She has survived wars. She has survived crises. She has watched the harbor change, ships getting ever larger, then smaller again, fish becoming ever fewer. But there is this constant, this stall, this fish, this work. For Ingrid, the fish is not mere product. The fish is a person, with a history, with a journey. Every fish came from a fisherman who went out into the North Sea, into wind and waves, to catch it. Every fish was once alive, moving, wild. Now it lies here on her stall, and Ingrid treats it with respect. She gives the fisherman the money he deserves. She gives the customer a worthy fish. She stands between them in the middle, making sure everything is fair. She has also experienced strange things. Once a man came to her stall and wept. He'd been a fishing captain, but his ship had sunk, and he'd stopped working. Ingrid gave him coffee and a piece of fish, and they talked for hours. The man came back many times over the years, always on the same day, at the same hour, and bought from her. It was as though he were seeking a connection to his earlier life. The modern world has knocked on her stall. Supermarket chains have come and offered her work. Large corporations have offered her money to lease her stall. But Ingrid said no. She doesn't want to be an employee. She doesn't want to work in a cold warehouse under fluorescent lights with products that come from deep freeze boxes. She wants to be on her market, with her fish, with her customers, with her freedom. Ingrid also raised her daughter, a child born during the war, under bombing attacks. She took the child with her to the stall in a basket. The child grew up between the fish and the shouts of the market, the sound of scales and the scent of the sea. Now, 40 years later, the daughter brings her own children to the stall. They are the 4th generation on this market. Summer is high season for Ingrid's stall. The tourists come and they want fresh fish. They want authenticity. They want a stall where a real person, not a machine, tells them which fish is good. Ingrid holds fish up to them and says, "This one here is excellent, caught just this morning. Look at the eyes, clear and bright. That's a good fish." Sometimes, after the market, when Ingrid goes home, she sits on the tram and looks out the window. She thinks about the coming week. It will rain again, that's no problem. There will be customers again. She'll know them, or there'll be new ones. There will be fish again, fresh, cold, alive in its way. She also thinks about soon retiring. She's not young anymore. Her hands aren't as strong as they once were. Sometimes her back hurts when she bends over the counter. But she can't imagine stopping. This stall isn't just work, it's an identity. Ingrid with fish. That's who she is. There are also the stories she has. She met a fisherman who fascinated her. They worked together for many years, side by side at the harbor, him with his trawler, her with her stall. He died 10 years ago, but she thinks of him often. She thinks of the gentle greetings when he passed, his hands full of fish. As she sits on the train heading home, the sun now low on the horizon, Ingrid thinks about the coming day. Tomorrow there will be fish again, customers again, work again. This isn't the life she perhaps imagined when she was young, but it's the life she got, and it's good. As the train pulls into Bremen and Ingrid rises, you close your eyes. You see the market woman before you, how she stands behind her counter with her rosy cheeks and her intelligent eyes. You see the silver fish gleaming on the damp paper. You see the hands that work without hesitation and without fear, filleting and weighing and wrapping. And you understand that this woman, who has sold fish her whole life, has actually been selling beauty, the beauty of honest work, of craftsmanly devotion, of love for the craft. And when you wake tomorrow morning, you'll think of her, and perhaps you'll understand that life is good when it's filled with love. The train rolled gently forward, and outside, the world was now completely dark. Just a few lights in the distance, solitary windows where others too were coming to rest. I thought of how many people in that moment were falling asleep all over the world, each in his bed, in his compartment, in his room, and how we were all part of a great, quiet movement, a movement into sleep. The rhythm of the wheels on the rails, clack, 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 was like the breathing of a great, friendly animal carrying us all together through the darkness, through time. And the landscape outside grew softer. The outlines of the trees dissolved. The fields became dark surfaces over which the moon sometimes let its pale light glide. I felt my breath slow, felt my heart slow, felt my whole body sink downward into the warm embrace of the seat cushion, into the warm embrace of this train, carrying me without my having to do anything for it. That was a good feeling, a rare feeling, to be carried without effort, simply to trust that the wheels will keep rolling, that the rails will keep going, that morning will eventually come. You're sitting on the train from Constance to Lindau, and Lake Constance stretches behind the gentle hills. You notice a woman with a weathered face whose blonde hair is held back by a headscarf. Her arms and neck are scratched, red lines bearing witness to cuts. She wears traditional Bavarian dress, and her hands are hard as wood. This is Hilda, and for 35 years she's been cutting reeds for thatch on Lake Constance. The reeds on Lake Constance are special. They don't grow everywhere. They need particular conditions. They love shallow, nutrient-rich water. They love the reed beds on the shore, where the water slows and the reeds can root. Hilda's family has tended and harvested the reed fields for generations. It's not just a skill, it's an art form, a science, a spirituality. Every winter, when the reeds dry out and turn brown, Hilda's work begins. With special sickles whose handles she's sharpened herself, she cuts the reeds low, just above the waterline. The movements are rhythmic, right, left, like a dance with nature. She works from early morning till late afternoon, often in frost and damp cold. Her hands turn blue from the cold, but she carries on working. The cut reeds aren't used immediately. They're bound into bundles, large, tight, heavy bundles, and hung to dry. Hilda has a special warehouse her grandfather built, with high beams and open walls where the wind can blow freely. The reeds must dry perfectly, not too quickly and not too slowly. If they dry too quickly, they become brittle. If they dry too slowly, they start to rot. Hilda knows every secret of this balance. When you get near Hilda's house, you smell the dried reeds straight away. They have a warm, grassy scent, like freshly cut grass on a hot summer's day. That's the smell of quality. Reeds that smell like that go into the best roofs. Hilda works with thatchers. She sells the cut and dried reeds to thatchers all over the Lake Constance region. These thatchers are craftspeople. They understand that a good reed roof isn't just beautiful, but also practical. A reed roof lasts 100 years, perhaps longer. A reed roof insulates better than tiles or sheet metal. A reed roof is also a living thing. Birds nest in it, insects find shelter in it. The work is dangerous. The sickles are sharp, and Hilda's fingers bear scars from knives and from the rough edges of reed. She once cut herself badly and fell into the water in December with ice at the shore. She fell in alone and no one was nearby, but she climbed out again. The cold was worse than the fear. She dragged herself home, bandaged the wound, and was back working the next morning. Lake Constance has changed in Hilda's lifetime. She remembers when the reeds were even denser, but in the 70s and 80s, the shore was built up. Marinas were built, houses appeared, and the natural reed beds were pushed back. Hilda's fields grew smaller. She had to adapt. She bought seeds and planted new reed beds. She worked with conservationists. She defended her heritage by changing it. Today, Hilda doesn't work alone anymore. Her grandson, Thomas, a serious boy of 16, comes on weekends to help her. Thomas likes the reeds, though he says they're boring. But he understands that this is a skill that dies if no one learns it. Hilda shows him the subtle differences, how to tell when the reeds are ready to harvest, how to hold the sickle to make clean cuts, how to bind the bundles so they don't slip. There's also a spiritual side to reed cutting that Hilda never speaks aloud. When she cuts the reeds, she feels a connection to all the reed cutters who came before her. Her grandmother, her great-grandmother, women whose names she doesn't know, but whose hands made the same movements. The reeds are the channel of this connection. The reeds are the language of generations. She's also noticed that the wildlife around Lake Constance has changed. The herons don't come to the reed beds as often. The ducks are fewer in number. The dragonflies are rarer. But when she cuts the reeds, she tries to do it so the vegetation can grow back. She doesn't cut everything. She leaves small patches where the animals can find shelter. She's not just a harvester. She's also a guardian. Hilda also owns photographs of old thatched roofs, black and white images from the 1920s and 1930s. She sometimes shows these photos to Thomas and says, "See that roof? I helped my grandmother make it, or rather, the reeds for it." The roofs have long since been renewed or have fallen in, but the thought that her work lasted 100 years comforts her. Hilda loves to work best in the dusk, when the sun hangs low in the sky and the Lake Constance landscape shifts between light and shadow. In these moments, with her feet in the cold water, her arms full of reeds, her eyes focused on the work, she feels complete. She's no longer Hilda, the old woman. She's just the reed cutter, the guardian, the artist. The houses with thatched roofs are like works of art. You see them in Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, those thick, brown, wavy roofs where birds nest and moss grows. That's Hilda's legacy. Each of these roofs contains part of her work, her love, her devotion. Sometimes she visits these houses after the thatchers have finished their work. She stands under the roofs and looks up. She sees the small splits and gaps where the reeds are laid overlapping like fish scales. She smells the fresh reeds. She thinks, "That's me up there. That's my handwriting, my story, my love for this lake that will live there for the next 100 years." During the train journey to Lindau, Hilda thinks about the coming harvest. It's been a cold winter. That's good for the reeds. They'll be strong without rot. She's already had requests from 3 thatchers who need reeds for big projects. A castle is being renovated. An old farmhouse is being restored. A hotel on the lake is getting a new roof. Hilda's reeds will be in them. She also thinks about Thomas. She hopes he'll carry on the tradition. But she doesn't force him. She just shows him the beauty. She shows him that hard work can also make you happy. She shows him that a life connected to the earth and to the seasons and to a place is a good life. The rest is in God's hands. Sometimes, when Hilda wades into the water to cut the reeds, she's overcome by a feeling of gratitude. She's grateful for the lake that's given her life. She's grateful for the skills her grandfather taught her. She's grateful for the work itself, the hard, thankless, wonderful work. As the train pulls into Lindau and Hilda rises, you close your eyes. You see the reeds before you in the dusk, with the sun low on the horizon. You see a woman up to her waist in Lake Constance with a sickle in her hand, cutting the reeds with long, rhythmic movements. You see the dried reeds in her warehouse, neatly stacked, ready for the next 100 years. And you see the houses with brown thatched roofs that look like nests where life can thrive. And so we journeyed on, the train and I, and the few other travelers who sat with me in the compartment or in the neighboring compartments, each in their own little corner of the world, each on their own path into sleep. The warmth of the carriage, the quiet crackling of the heating, the clack of the wheels on the points, all of it became a shared song, a song without words, a song that carries you and soothes you and says, you can let go now. You can rest now. The train travels on for you. Time travels on for you. The world arranges itself while you sleep. You're sitting on the train from Trieste to Koper, and the Adriatic glimmers beside you like molten silver. You notice a woman with silver hair who's leaning her head out of the window and breathing in the breeze. Her shoulders are broad and muscular, her arms sunburned down to the last finger. Salt flecks cling to her dark hair and her blouse. This is Petra, and for 40 years she's been harvesting salt from the Adriatic. Petra's family has been running the salt pans in Piran and the surrounding bays for many generations. These pans aren't modern. They're exactly as they've been for hundreds of years. Shallow basins made of tamped earth, arranged in a carefully balanced system, one above the other. Seawater flows in, flows slowly from basin to basin, and as it flows, the sun evaporates the water until only salt remains. It's work that depends entirely on the sun, the wind, the moisture in the air. In summer, when Petra works on her salt basins, the heat is merciless. The sun reflects off the pale salt and the shallow water and burns the skin from below and above. The salt water eats into every wound on her hands. But Petra doesn't mind. She's toughened. Her skin is like leather. Her hands are tools that are wiser than her mind. There's a particular time for salt making. In June, when the sun is highest and the winds come from the east, the bora bringing cold, dry gusts. Then Petra works far into the night. She must keep the basins just right. Too much rain and the salt concentration grows too thin. Too little water and the pans dry out. Too strong winds and the salt gets blown away. It's like playing an eternal, slow instrument. She doesn't work alone. Her grandson Marco comes on weekends to help her. He's 14 and would much rather go into town to play football or sit in cafes with his friends. But Petra's negotiated with him. If he helps her 3 weekend days, he can buy himself a laptop, the one he's always wanted. Marco complains while he works, the heat, the boredom, the salt in his shoes. But Petra knows he's learning something. He's learning patience. He's learning the language of nature. In Petra's hands, salt making has its own mathematics. She can see how concentrated a liquid is simply by looking at it. She knows the exact moment when the salt is ready to harvest. Not just science, but a feeling her grandmother taught her. She scrapes the salt together with a flat wooden spatula her father made 60 years ago. The spatula is dark brown from use, smooth as silk from thousands of working days. The salt that Petra harvests has a different color and taste from industrial salt from salt mines. It's grayish yellow, sometimes reddish from algae and microorganisms. It tastes of the sea, of wind, of the history of an entire coastline. Chefs and connoisseurs travel to buy Petra's salt. They pay more for it because they know it contains the past. On the train journey from Trieste to Koper, Petra sits and thinks about the coming month. The weather forecast says the Bora will blow strong in mid-July. That's good. The Bora will speed up evaporation. But she must watch for rain too. Last season, there was an unexpected thunderstorm that flooded 3 basins. The salt was ruined. She had to refill the basins and wait another 3 weeks before the salt was ready again. Her family wants her to retire. Her son, a lawyer in Ljubljana, has repeatedly offered to support her. He says, "Mother, you're too old for this work. Sell the salt pans. Come, live in the city. I'll look after you." But Petra won't sell. The salt pans aren't just work, they're continuity. They're the link to her grandparents and their grandparents. Petra also has photo albums. In an album from 1965, you can see her grandmother standing in exactly the same position, with the same posture, the same movement, scraping the salt being harvested. It looks as though Petra is performing the same action, as though she's continuing her grandmother's story. The grandson Marco once saw this photo and said, "Nona, you look just like great-grandmother." Petra had smiled, but it was more than a smile. It was an awareness of continuity, of an unbroken line. There are other salt makers along the Adriatic too. One named Sovana works 2 kilometers south of Petra's parcels. The 2 women aren't really friends. It's too tiring to be close friends when you live next to each other. But there's an understanding between them. When Petra's basins threaten to overflow, Sovana warns her of coming rain. When Sovana's spatula breaks, Petra brings her a spare. They're women of the same trade, the same standing, the same devotion. The scent of the salt pans is unmistakable. It's not just salt smell. It's a mixture of damp mud, dried seaweed, and the metallic freshness of the sea. When Petra walks home from her parcels, she carries this scent with her. It clings to her hair, her clothes, her skin. Her neighbor, Frau Molinari, always says, "Ah, I can smell you from far away, Petra. You bring the sea with you." In the evening, when Petra's at home, she sits and watches the salt pans. They're like a great, slow artwork created by the sun and the wind. She thinks about the salt grains, how many billions of them there are. Each one is a story, a journey through time and space. From the sea to her basins, from one evaporation to the next, until at last the solid substance, the permanent, that which remains. Petra knows every centimeter of her salt pans. She knows the place where the water first enters, a narrow gate that she opens and closes like the pulse of a living being. She knows the deepest place, where the salt concentration is highest. She knows the place where the water striders dance, those little insects that glide on the surface of the salt water. They're harmless, but Petra loves to watch them move, as though they were dancing on air. The salt she harvests will go to many places. Some will flow into the restaurants of Trieste, where it's used in elaborate dishes. Some will go to farmers who use it to preserve fish. Some will end up in pharmacies for salt baths and healing treatments. And Petra will never know these stories. She'll simply work, harvest, and let the salt go. Sometimes, when the work is particularly hard, when the sun burns relentlessly and the wind fails, Petra thinks about retirement. But then she sees the light in the water, or she watches the water flow from one basin to the next, like time itself, and she knows she can't give up. This isn't just a job. This is her calling. This is how Petra changes the world, one handful of salt grains at a time. As the train pulls into Koper and Petra rises, you close your eyes. You see the white and grayish-yellow fields of the salt pans before you, the endless work of evaporation, the patiently burning sun, and a woman with the hands of earth and the heart of the sea. You imagine how she'll go out again tomorrow into the heat and light to perform the daily miracle, to transform the sea into salt. And somewhere in that dark landscape, I thought, others are now sleeping in their beds, in their houses, and the moon looks down on them, and the moon looks down on us, and everything is in its proper place. The fields are in their place, the forests are in their place, the rivers are in their place, and I am in my place, here in this carriage, here in this warm cradle of wood and cloth and metal, carrying me where I must go, asking nothing of me but that I trust and rest. You're sitting on this train from Husum to Westerland, and your gaze falls on the woman across from you. She has her eyes closed, but she's smiling in her light sleep. Her hands are tanned from the sun, the nails short and practical. She wears a simple linen shirt, and round her neck hangs a pair of binoculars on a black strap. You can see straight away that this is someone who spends her life with nature. Her name is Margot, and for 30 years she's spent her days on the sand banks of the North Sea, watching gray seals and harbor seals. She knows every bay between List and Hornrum, every tidal current, every rock where the seals prefer to rest. The shoals and deep channels are to her like the rooms of a great house. She could navigate them with her eyes closed. In the morning, when mist still lies over the mud flats, Margot laces up her Wellington boots and packs her binoculars and her notebooks. The notebooks are old and worn, full of handwritten entries, names of individual seals, their habits, when they were born, what scars they bear. She calls the animals as if they were old friends. Kuno with the white patch, pregnant Greta, the wanderer who always comes from Amrum. Summer on Sylt is the happiest time for her. The air smells of salt water and seaweed, of weathered wood and fine sand. When the sun hangs low on the horizon, and in North German summer it never quite dips below it, the mudflats glow in golden and purple tones. The seals come out from the deeper water then and haul out near the sandbanks. Their wet pelts gleam like polished metal. Margot then sits for hours on a mossy rise, completely still. She doesn't move, barely breathes, and her gaze wanders from one seal to the next. She's learned that these creatures grow nervous when people move abruptly or speak loudly, so she waits in silence. And while she waits, she watches them play. Yes, play, for seals are playful like dogs, and watches them groom each other. Sometimes they growl, sometimes they whistle, sometimes they make deep guttural sounds that carry far across the mudflats. She's watched seals give birth to their young. She was there when the newborn pups, hooded seals as they're called, first swam out into the water. She's observed how a mother lay beside her calf for 2 days, never taking her eyes off it, and how the other seals respectfully kept their distance. These moments have changed Margot. They've become the center of her life. In her notebooks, she documents everything. She writes down the order in which seals come to their favorite spots, which ones stay away in storms, which always return. She follows the populations over years, watches generations grow up. A colleague of hers, a biologist from the University of Kiel, says that her observations have scientific value. But for Margot, it's not about science, it's about love. The work isn't easy. In winter, it becomes brutally cold on the sandbanks. The northwesterly winds drive rain and snow across the mudflats. Sometimes she can't venture out for weeks on end. She sits then in her little cottage in Hornum, writing things down, looking at old photos, and waiting. But winter, too, has its beauty. The silence, the snow-covered mudflats, the ice swept up on the shore in grotesque forms. She knows the dangers. She's seen seals caught in fishing nets. She's watched injured animals swim out into the water with plastic wrapped round their bodies. Once, she spent a week trying to help a seal whose front flipper was wound with old fishing line. She couldn't reach the line. It was too dangerous for the animal, so she documented it, reported it to the authorities, and waited. After 3 weeks, she saw the seal again. The line had rotted away. The animal was free. These experiences have bound her more tightly to her work. She knows that she can't save the North Sea alone, but she can observe, she can record. She can draw the world's attention to the seals, to the way they communicate, how they raise their young, how they seem to feel grief when one of their calves doesn't survive. She can remind humanity of its responsibility. Sometimes while she's watching, Margot plays a bit of classical music on her old transistor radio. She's noticed that seals become calmer when music plays, particularly Debussy or Eric Satie. That's something no one else knows. That's her secret with the seals. A particular harbor seal named Jürgen comes back to Sylt around the same time each year. Jürgen is old. Margot reckons he's at least 20 years old, and he has a long scar on his side where a boat probably clipped him years ago. Jürgen is Margot's favorite. She waits for him like for an old friend. When he comes, she knows the summer has truly begun. When Jürgen came last summer with a new young companion, Margot called her Inga. Margot sat in the same spot for 3 days to watch how the two of them got on together. They were tender with each other. Jürgen showed Inga around, pointed out the best favorite spots, where the sun was warm and the sand dry. He never left her alone for long. That was, Margot thought, what love is. Not the drama of great feeling, but the quiet, faithful presence. This observation she wrote into a new notebook, one she would keep for the story of Jürgen and Inga. The people in Westerland and Hornum know Margot. Some think her eccentric, an old woman who spends her days with seals. But the schools ask her to come and tell the children about the harbor seals, and the fishermen respect her, for they understand that she wants to protect the ecosystem that their own lives depend on. Today, on this train journey to Westerland, she has the summer ahead of her. The season will be a good one. She's seen it already in the first days of June. 3 new females have arrived, ones she hasn't seen before. That means the population is growing. That means hope. She thinks about the months ahead. In a few weeks, the first calves will be born. She'll follow each birth, every single one. She'll see which mothers are experienced, which are having young for the first time and nervous, jumping about. She'll hear the young seals make their first cries, weak, high sounds, like the crying of newborns. She'll document which predators, mainly sea eagles, threaten the calves, and how the mothers defend them. This work will fill her life like a blessing. As the train crosses the bridge onto Sylt, Margot slowly opens her eyes. She looks out towards the mud flats in the distance. The sun still hangs low in the sky. It's not yet noon, and the light is golden and warm. She's already mentally lacing up her Wellington boots. The train begins to slow, pulls into Westerland station, and Margot rises slowly. She takes her binoculars. In a few minutes, she'll be back out on the sandbanks, searching for the familiar shapes of her friends. And as you watch her step out, with her tanned legs and her worn linen shirt, you realize that a woman who gives so much, asking for nothing in return, just observation, just love, just quiet presence. Such a woman knows something very important about life. And as the train carries on into the distance, you too close your eyes and see before you the mud flats, the light, the seals. And the landscape outside grew softer. The shapes of the trees dissolved. The fields became dark patches across which the moon sometimes let its pale light glide. I felt my breathing slow, felt my heart slow, felt my whole body sink downward into the warm embrace of the seat cushion, into the warm embrace of this train carrying me, asking nothing of me but that I trust and rest. That was a good feeling, a rare feeling, to be carried along without effort, simply to trust that the wheels would keep turning, that the rails would keep leading on, that morning would come eventually. The train was heading south again, back to the great flat plains of Romania. An older woman boarded, carrying baskets full of fruit, apples, pears, cherries, though it was only April. Her clothes were practical, brown like earth, and on her head she wore a scarf tied like a grandmother from a fairy tale. She settled beside me and straightaway began, "I'm heading to Arad. I've got a fruit orchard, 5 hectares, and I travel the route to sell my fruit." I asked how long she'd been tending orchards. 50 years, she said simply. Since I was married. My husband was a fruit gardener. His father was a fruit gardener, his grandfather. But this spring fruit, the cherries, the pears, I learned that myself with patience and mistakes. She gestured to the baskets. This here, the beginning is always difficult. It's a wonder I have so much fruit in April at all. It's early. But the winters these last years have been warm, and the trees, they're confused. They bloom earlier. She opened one of the baskets and showed me cherries, deep red, almost black, glinting like jewels. "These are late ripening," she explained. "Normally cherries are June fruit, but this is a variety we've bred to mature late. It took 15 years before we found the right sort for growing here in Banat." She gave me one to taste. The flavor was intense, sweet, with a slightly tart undertone. "The Banat soil," she said, "gives the fruit a special taste. It's not just fruit, it's the earth, the years, the sun." "My husband, he's been dead 10 years, she said quietly. "And I carry on alone. I have 2 sons. They don't want to be fruit gardeners. One's an engineer, the other's in Vienna, a nurse. That's fine for me." She looked at her hands. "But my hands, they still want to be fruit gardeners. They can't keep still." I asked how difficult the work was, managing it alone. "Difficult," she admitted. "In summer, July and August, that's 16, 17 hours a day. For that I have 2 helpers, women from the village, who come for the harvest. But most of the time I'm alone, pruning, spraying, for diseases, insects, fertilizing, watering." She leaned back. "But when I go out in the morning and I see that a new apple tree is flowering, a tree I planted 3 years ago, then I forget the effort." She pulled out a very old notebook from her bag, the pages full of handwritten notes, sketches, plans. "That's my husband's notebook," she said gently. "He wrote everything down, when each tree was planted, when the first flowers came, how much yield each year. And I carry on. I write down what happens, which trees are ill, which are particularly productive." She showed me the entries. 1974. New pear trees planted, variety Burbosk. Those are now 50-year-old trees, still productive, still giving fruit. "The Bosk pears," she told me dreamily. "They're the most beautiful. Brown, very sweet. The flesh is tender as butter. That's why it's called Burbosk, butter pear. When I harvest in autumn, September, October, and I bite into a Bosk pear, still warm from the sun, that's like heaven." She made a small gesture as though holding the pear. "The skin, it's rough, but the color is like gold mixed with brown. Very elegant. Not pretty like a smooth fruit, but precious." I asked whether there were varieties that were difficult to grow. "Yes," she said seriously. "The apricots, I don't like them. They're temperamental. They need such warmth. They flower early, and then if a late frost comes, the flowers freeze, no fruit. 5 years in a row I had no apricot crop. Then I tore them out." She flipped through a notebook. "That was 2008. Since then, cherries, pears, apples, they're reliable. The cherry needs a cold winter. If there's no winter, there's no cherry. But the apple is flexible. The apple can grow almost anywhere. In spring, she said, and her eyes grew bright. When all the trees are flowering, that's the magic. The whole orchard is white from apple blossoms, and pink from cherry, and a bit of greenish white from pear. And the scent, when you smell 3-4 hectares of fruit trees in bloom, it's like looking into heaven. She paused. The bees. In spring the wild bees come, the bumblebees, all the insects. They drink from the flowers, and that's how the fruit begins to form. She showed me other fruit in the baskets. Plums still firm, blackberries in preserve jars. I made this last autumn, she said. Blackberries with sugar, a bit of lemon. I make 150 jars every autumn. I sell some at the market, but most of them I give to friends, family, people I know. She gave me a jar. That's for you. The blackberries, they're from the wild bushes on the edge of my orchard, not cultivated, wild. They taste different, more intense. She leaned closer, her voice becoming more intimate. In Banat, the plain is so flat, so open, and I'm often alone there, just me and the trees. And my husband, though he's dead, I still feel him there, especially in spring when the trees flower. I talk to him, sometimes aloud, sometimes in my head, and I say, "Look, the new blossoms are extra beautiful this year." Or, "The pest is gone, your new formula worked, see?" She smiled sadly. That's not mad. It's normal for people who've worked long with the earth and life. The care of the trees, she said. It's like medicine. You have to know what disease it is. Aphids, spider mites, fungus. Each disease needs different treatment. And there are years. Some years are weak. Nature is weak. There's too much disease. Other years are strong. Everything's healthy, productive, full of life. She pointed to her notebook. It's like a doctor's notebook. Each tree is a patient, and I'm the doctor. If a tree falls ill, I must act quickly or it will die. My granddaughter asked me recently, she told me, why don't I do something modern? Vegetables, perhaps, or flowers for market. And I told her, fruit is modern. Fruit is life. An apple tree, it can live 100 years, a century. My tree, it was already there before I was born, and it will still be there when I'm dead. That's not old. That's wise. One thing many people don't know, she continued, is that the best fruit, the most beautiful, the sweetest, doesn't come from the young tree. The young tree gives plenty of fruit, but small, not so sweet. The tree that's 20, 30 years old, that gives the best fruit. The tree has enough experience, enough strength, enough depth with its roots. It's the same with people. The older you get, if you live with care, the bigger your fruit becomes. The wisdom, the sweetness in life. We sat quietly. The train ran through the Banat plain. I could see from the window old fruit trees scattered through the landscape, relics of old orchards. That there, she pointed, that was perhaps an orchard like mine once. But the owner grew old, died, and no one cared for it. Now the trees are wild, abandoned, sad. She leaned back. That's why I carry on, not just for myself, for the orchard. The orchard needs me, and I need the orchard too. It's mutual. And the landscape outside grew softer. The shapes of the trees dissolved. The fields became dark patches across which the moon sometimes let its pale light glide. I felt my breathing slow, felt my heart slow, felt my whole body sink downward into the warm embrace of the seat cushion, into the warm embrace of this train carrying me, asking nothing of me but that I trust and rest. That was a good feeling, a rare feeling, to be carried along without effort, simply to trust that the wheels would keep turning, that the rails would keep leading on, that morning would come eventually. The train had left the Alps behind, and now we were in the flatter landscape of Alsace. A woman with short gray hair and a slight Alsatian accent boarded. She wore green clothes with many pockets full of fabrics, and one couldn't help but notice small carved wooden storks. She sat down opposite me and straightaway began, "I'm from Celesta. I always go to Colmar for the market to sell my things." I asked her what was so special about the storks. She laughed heartily. "Ah, you don't know the story? Perfect, then I can tell you." She picked up one of the carvings, a small stork in pale wood, the wings finely worked. "On my roof, where I live with my husband, we have an old house, very old, perhaps 200 years. There is a nest, a stork's nest. And every spring, when the storks return from Africa, 2 of them, my stork and my stork hen, they land on my roof and build up the nest again." "How long has this been going on?" I asked. 25 years, she said. "My husband and I, we bought the house when the young storks were already there. The first year, we want to take down the nest. It's too heavy, too large, perhaps 1,000 kilos. But then, the day before we were going to do it, we see there are new storks landing, and my husband says to me, 'Let them stay.' And I say, 'Yes, let them stay.' And we've been doing it ever since." "It's not easy," she continued. "The nest, it throws sticks and dirt on our roof. The smell in summer is strong. Fish that the storks bring, and the droppings. And the noise, the storks clatter their beaks. It's like a machine gun, very loud. But I love it." She showed me an old photograph from her bag. A white stork on a roof, wings spread against the sky. "That's Alain. That's my stork's name. I know it's really the same one year after year. His left wing feather has a small dent, see? I noticed it from the very beginning, and every year he comes back with that dent." I asked whether the storks ever failed to return. She became serious. "Yes, it happens. Some years, storks die. The journey from Africa to Europe is long, very long, and dangerous. Windstorms, cargo ships, power lines, and if they don't find enough food on the way, they die. In 1998, my Alain didn't come back. I was very sad. A whole year I went about thinking, he's gone. We'll never see him again." She paused. But the next spring, he came back with the same dent in his wing. She pulled out more things from her bags, fabrics with storks embroidered on them. "I do this myself," she said. "All of this, embroidered by hand. Napkins, little cushions, tablecloths, all with storks. It's my passion. When I wake in the morning and see Alain working on the nest, I embroider all day." She showed me a particularly fine piece, a napkin with a stork caught in a moment of flight, as though it had just swept past. "This one took me 4 weeks, but look at the stork's eyes. They're very real, yes?" "In spring, when the storks arrive," she said dreamily, "it's like a festival. All the people in our village, they come out onto the street to watch the storks land. And then in May, when the eggs hatch, oh, the young ones, they're so dark, so silly, like little dinosaurs." She made gestures with her arms as though showing the stork's movements. "I practice flying. It's so funny. They don't really fly, rather hop. They jump about on the nest and spread their wings big, and sometimes they lose their balance." I asked what happened to the young storks. "Where do they go?" "In August, when they're ready," she said, "they fly away, down to Africa, and some of them come back, sometimes the next year, sometimes not for 5 years. That's the beautiful part, and that's the sad part." She looked out the window. "There's one. I call him Little Alain. I think he's my Alain's son. And he came back after 4 years. And now he has his own nest very close by, just 3 houses away. And I can see when Alan and little Alan are together, the storks, they greet each other, they clatter together. You understand, she said, leaning closer. The storks, they're also teachers. They teach me what faithfulness is. Elaine, he comes back every year to the same nest, not to a different nest, always to ours. And the stork hen, we call her Alma, she comes back every year too, and Elaine waits for her. When she arrives, the two of them, they dance together. It's really a dance with wing and neck movements. It's love you can see. She leaned back. My husband and I, we've been together 40 years, and when I see Elaine and Alma dance, I think, that's us too. That's our love as well. In March, when the storks arrive, I get goosebumps, she went on, her voice becoming softer. Because I hear it first. The sound of wings, very loud, and then clack, clack, clack with the beak. That's their way of saying, we're home. And I run up to the roof and I see them, with my own eyes, landing on our nest. And every year, it's like the first time, I weep. She wiped her eyes. The first 2-3 weeks, the storks are very busy. They repair the nest because it was damaged in the winter. The wind, the snow, it's harsh. And then, when the nest is ready, the two of them lay eggs and then babies. She pulled out another book from her bag, very worn, the pages full of entries. That's my journal, she said. Every day when I see the storks, I write it down, date, time, what the storks are doing. March 15, Alan arrived at 11:47. Alma came in March 21st at 14:22. I've written down all the dates since 1998. I know exactly when the storks come back each year. And the babies, how many? Usually 3 or 4 young ones per year. She pointed to the entries, very carefully written in different colors. This is my artwork, this journal. This is the story of my life with the storks written down. You must understand, she said, leaning closer. The storks are not just birds to me. They are family. They are, housemates. We share the roof, and I look after them. If I see the nest has a gap, I repair it a bit. If in winter a feather gets left behind, sometimes they lose feathers, I collect them. And in autumn, before they leave, I pray for them. I pray that the journey is safe, that they find food, that they come back. She showed me another small carved stork, very detailed, with tiny eyes made of dark wood. That's my favorite, she said. I made it 5 years ago when Alain was injured. He came back one year with a bent wing, perhaps from a bullet or a window crash, who knows, and I carved this while I prayed for him. She gave me the carving. That's for you. The wood is boxwood, very old, very hard. This stork will live a long time, like the real Alain. You know, she said at last, I'm just an old woman with storks on the roof. But that is my life. That is my artwork. Not everyone has to make art on paper or in a factory. My artwork is living with the storks, understanding their language, sharing the roof with them. She leaned back and closed her eyes. And when I die one day, she said very softly, I hope the storks are still on our roof, that my husband looks after them, and that someone tells the story that the old woman with the storks lived here. The train had filled up again. It was morning, and new passengers were boarding. Next to me sat an older woman with silver-white hair, braided thick in a single plait. She wore traditional Romanian dress, a black dress with red embroidery, the pattern geometric, crystalline shapes that looked rather like frozen time. In her lap lay a large piece of wool, red, dark red, almost blackish red. Good morning, I said, and she nodded, but didn't speak straight away. She was busy untangling the wool. Her fingers moved with the speed and precision of a machine, yet needing no machine at all. "You're heading to Bayamare?" I ventured at last. She looked at me, her eyes very bright, a sort of gray-blue, like a stormy sky. "To Sighetu first," she said. "I'm a carpet weaver from Maramureș, up in the mountains. I travel this route twice a week to sell my carpets at the market in Bayamare." She opened a large bag, and the sight that greeted me was overwhelming. Carpets in all sizes, every one hand-knotted, each with patterns that looked as though they'd come from another age. 50 years I've been tying knots," she said. "My mother taught me when I was 6 years old, and her mother taught her, and so on. No one knows how many generations back." She lifted one up, small, perhaps a meter square. The colors were deep reds, dark blue, gold. "Look at the patterns," she said. The patterns on the carpets were intricate. Geometric, yes, but not haphazard. There was an inner logic I could feel, even if I couldn't explain it. "That one there," she pointed to a motif. "That's the house. It means shelter, family. And this here, another pattern, is the path that goes up into the mountains. The path is important. It shows there's movement, that nothing stands still." Her voice was soft, almost singing as she described the patterns. "And the red is blood. It is life. It is love, too. A good carpet has plenty of red." I asked how long it took to tie one of these carpets. "The small one? 3 weeks," she said. "If I work every day, perhaps 5 hours. But the larger ones, I've made some 2 meters by 3. You're looking at 5-6 months." She sat up straighter. "Every knot is tied by hand, every single one. A carpet this size has perhaps 200,000 knots. Work it out, 5-6 months. How many knots per day, per hour that comes to?" She pulled something else from her rucksack. A thick book, very old, the pages yellowed. "This is my grandmother's pattern book," she said. "She wrote down all the patterns, not in words, you understand, in embroidery. Each page shows a pattern, and at the side are numbers that say 2 centimeters of red, then 1 centimeter of blue, then red again." She turned the pages slowly, and I could see each page was a work of art in itself, small embroideries showing the knotting patterns. I've learned the book by heart, but when I'm knotting, I look at it sometimes anyway, not because I've forgotten, but to greet her, my grandmother, to say, I'm still doing it. "In spring and summer, I do a lot of knotting," she continued. "Less in winter. My eyes, they grow weaker with the years. And in winter it's dark, and I need plenty of light for the fine work." She showed me her hands. The fingers were shaped, rather misshapen almost, from all the knotting. The index finger on each hand was flattened on one side where she knots, where the cords rub. "That's normal," she laughed lightly. "It's like with a carpenter. Your hands change with the work. My hands aren't pretty anymore, but they're right. They know their job." I asked whether it was growing harder, the work, as she got older. "Harder? Well," she said thoughtfully. "The work itself doesn't get harder, but there are fewer dyes, not like there used to be. Once I used natural dyes, madder root for red, indigo for blue, walnut shells for brown. Now I have to use bought dyes. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the same. A carpet tied with natural dyes, it has a sort of soul that the other doesn't have." She pointed to a particularly lovely carpet, deep burgundy and dark blue with a golden border. "I made this one last year, for a wedding. The couple wanted a carpet to stand on, to be married upon. I designed the pattern for them, 4 months of knotting. And when I finished it and looked at it, I wasn't sad, even though it was leaving my hands. Because I know that carpet will lie there, and it will watch them grow old together, watch their love deepen." She touched the carpet gently, a small tenderness. She showed me another piece of paper, an order written in Romanian. "This is from last week," she said. A lady from Bucharest wants a carpet in her favorite colors, peach and cream and a little gold. 6 months' work. She doesn't pay much, perhaps 500 euros, but that's enough for me. I live simply and my house is paid for. She folded the paper carefully. You know, many people think handcraft is poorly paid and so you shouldn't do it. But when you see that you've made something with your own hands, something that will last, something that could last 100 years, well, that's not poorly paid. That's the best paid there is. I asked how she managed the most difficult patterns, the complicated ones. With patience, she said simply, and with light, and with concentration. Sometimes when I'm working on a very difficult pattern, I don't count the knots anymore. I breathe into the rhythm. It's like meditation. My mind becomes very quiet, and my hands know what to do. She showed me her notebook again. Every pattern has a rhythm. The rhythm tells you when the colors change. If I notice I'm going wrong, if you were counting, I just feel it. The muscles in my fingers, they know. Spring is the best time, she went on. The light is bright and sweet. It makes the colors more beautiful. I work outside sometimes, in the garden, when the weather's good. I can set up my loom by the window or under a tree, and while I knot, I hear the birds, smell the blossoms. That's not just work. That's a whole life. My daughter, she doesn't like it, she said suddenly. She says it's old work. Why don't I do something modern? She won't learn to knot. She wants to work in a bank or something. She looked at me. That's all right for me. Not everyone has to do the same as their parents. But sometimes I think, who will I give this book to? Who will I show how the patterns work? And I think, perhaps her daughter, my granddaughter. Perhaps she'll want to when she's older. You never know. We drove through the mountain landscape of Maramureș. The windows showed green hills, old wooden houses with traditional roofs. You see, said the carpet weaver, that's the land that lives in my patterns. The mountains, the houses, the people. It's all there. And when someone buys one of my carpets and takes it to Vienna or Budapest, they carry all this history with them. That's beautiful. She leaned back, her fingers moving automatically, knotting the air as though she couldn't keep still. She gave me a small carpet, a piece the size of a bracelet with the weave carefully made. That's for protection, she said. On the back I've written a small note, the date, my name, my place, so whoever finds it will always know where it comes from. I took the carpet. The wool was soft, warm, as though it were alive. Wear it or hang it. It blesses the place where it lies. She closed her eyes, and I saw her drift away, to the mountains perhaps, into the chords of her carpets, into her family's story. It was getting on towards evening. The train had grown quieter, and I was sitting alone in the compartment when the door slid open. A woman of middle years stepped in with curly brown hair, and straight away I caught the scent. Honey, warm as an open hand, mingled with beeswax and something floral I couldn't quite place. She wore a beige suit. The fabric looked as though it was woven from fine fibers, and at her neck hung a small brooch, a bee in gold. "Might I sit here?" she asked, gesturing to the seat beside me. I nodded, and she settled herself with the ease of someone accustomed to long periods of sitting still. "You're heading to Neusiedl?" she said, not really waiting for an answer. "I can tell by the route. I travel this way 3 times a year." She leaned back, studying me with eyes the color of dark honey. "I'm a beekeeper, at the lake about 20 kilometers from Neusiedl. Everyone knows me out there, but not everyone quite understands what it is I do." I asked her how long she'd been keeping bees. She smiled as though I'd asked the right question. 46 years, she said quietly. Started with 4 colonies. Now I've got 3 apiaries, bee yards, with 180 colonies altogether. Not large by commercial standards, but large enough for a person with a heart. She reached into her bag and pulled something out, a glass jar, honey glinting inside like liquid gold. This is from this year, first harvest. April honey. The bees were only on the onions and the early flowers. She held the jar towards me, and I caught the scent. Spicy, warm, with something green and fresh beneath it. "See the color?" she asked. "That yellowish green? It tells me the onions played a large part. Onion, garlic, and other early bloomers give honey that shade. By May, it'll be darker, more golden, when the fruit trees come into flower. And come June, when the plain's covered in rape and clover, it turns almost white." She took the jar back, turned it slowly in the compartment lamp. "Each season, each month, has its own honey. Most people don't realize that." I asked whether it wasn't difficult, managing 180 colonies all on her own. She shook her head slowly. "Not alone. I've 2 helpers, a young woman from Vienna who comes every spring, and my son, who won't admit it, but he's there every weekend. He doesn't love the bees, mind you. For him, they're just insects. But he loves me." She looked out the window. "The bees, they're not difficult. They're precise. You just have to learn their language. Then they tell you everything, whether they're doing well, whether they're hungry, whether the queen is sound." She leaned forward, her voice growing quieter, more intimate. "In April, that's now, there's a moment that's rather like, well, like a mother seeing her first child, I suppose. After the winter, the queen finally starts laying eggs properly again. The first new worker bees emerge, and the hive, which was practically sleeping before, it just explodes into life. You can feel the energy. If you put your hand on the hive, it vibrates." She made a gesture, her fingers trembling subtly. "That's not metaphor, that's real. The bees vibrate at a different frequency when they're doing well." "I've got to head out early tomorrow, 5 o'clock start from Neusiedl," she said. "Spring's the intense time. I need to check, is the queen healthy? Does the hive have room enough to grow? Do I need to split them, divide the bees, to keep them from swarming?" She turned a piece of paper in her hands on which small sketches were drawn, sketches of beehives. "Swarming, that's when a hive gets too large and divides, sends out scouts for a new home. Natural thing. But for me, I need to manage it, otherwise I lose half my colonies." I asked how beekeeping had changed over the years. She lowered her gaze. "It was easier once, or rather not easier, a different kind of difficult. My father, he started back in the 50s, 3 or 4 colonies, that was the norm. You knew where the flowers were, in the meadows, in the orchards. Now the meadows are gone, pesticides everywhere, monoculture. The bees can barely find forage in June and July, so I have to feed them sugar, otherwise they'll starve come winter." She bit her lip. "And the varroa mite. It's a parasite, tiny thing, you can't see it without a magnifying glass. It destroys the colonies if you're not vigilant. My father never knew of such a thing." "But why do you carry on if it's so difficult?" I asked. She was quiet for a long while. "Because the world doesn't live without bees," she said at last. "And because I understand something that few understand. When I'm in my apiaries and I hear the bees humming and I smell the honey and I see the colors of the flowers in spring, then I have no doubts anymore. This matters. This is life." She leaned back and told me about her favorite apiary. It sits right on the lake where old willow trees grow. In May and June, when everything's in flower, the robinia trees, the limes, it's rather like a festival for my bees. They head out at 6 in the morning and don't come home till evening. The honey, then, it has a sweet taste, pale as champagne. She paused. "I've got a little cottage out there where I stay during the busy season. Lying in bed, I can hear the bees at night, building the comb, pumping out moisture. The humming is like an old symphony, deep, rhythmic. It's the loveliest sound I know." I asked whether she was ever stung. She laughed. "All the time," she said. "Not deliberately, the bees aren't wicked, but when you're working amongst 100,000 insects and you accidentally squash a queen or disturb a hive, you'll get stung. My skin's covered in scars from it." She rolled up her sleeve, and indeed, her arms were speckled with small white marks. "First year was rough. Every sting swelled up like an apple. But your body learns. Now the stings are passed quickly." She showed me one of her notebooks, handwritten with tiny notes. "These are my records for each colony," she explained. "Each one has a name. The ones over there are all named after flowers from my garden: chrysanthemum, lily, tulip, roses. And I note each month how many frames of brood, how much honey, what's the mood of the colony." She pointed to a particularly thick notebook. "If you watch a colony over years, you learn its personality. Some are aggressive, some are gentle as angels. Tulip, she's gentle. Chrysanthemum is a fighter. When there's trouble, she bristles up." She pulled something else from her bag, a small jar of propolis, the resin the bees make. "This is for you," she said. "Propolis. If you fall ill, you make a tincture, put it in alcohol, wait a week, then 3 drops a day. Works against everything." She gave me the jar, her hand warm. "My bees made this for you. Let me thank you for listening to me." We sat in silence. The train ran alongside lakes. The Neusiedl lake shimmered in the moonlight, broad and still like a great eye. And I thought about how this woman would be heading to her apiaries before sunrise tomorrow, visiting those 180 colonies, listening to what each one needed. How there are people like her who still understand that the world is made of small lives, all connected together like honeycomb, each cell important, each cell part of the whole. And somewhere in that dark landscape, I thought, others are sleeping in their beds, in their houses, and the moon looks down on them, and the moon looks down on us, and everything is in its proper place. The fields are in their place, the forests are in their place, the rivers are in their place, and I am in my place, here in this carriage, here in this warm cradle of wood and cloth and metal, carrying me along, asking nothing of me but that I trust and rest. You know, when you travel on trains long enough, you come to know the special people who are on the move. I didn't notice this woman at first. She sat in the corner of the compartment with a large basket full of herb bundles. The whole air smelled of dried mint, wild thyme, and something darker that I couldn't quite name right away. She was old, her hands spotted brown like the earth itself. "Good evening," I said, and she smiled as though she'd been waiting for me all along. Her eyes were green like young leaves. "I'm going to Sibiu," she told me without my asking. "The same every spring. I picked these herbs in March, up in the Carpathians. Can you imagine? The snow is just melting and everything's already sprouting." She gestured at the bundles. "This lot I gathered myself at 68 years of age." I asked her about the darkest thing in her bundles, that intense smell. She laughed quietly, pulled out a loose bundle, blackish green, almost black, the leaves rough and ancient. "Arnica," she said, "for pain, old injuries. You don't like the smell, yes? That's right, it's strong. It works deep." She held it out to me, not aggressively, but as though sharing a secret. "My grandmother showed me where it grows, only in the highest part of the mountains, where scarcely anyone goes. The Carpathians give their gifts only to those who are respectful." The train rattled rhythmically, and she told me how she's been doing this route for 50 years now, always in spring, to sell her herbs. "My husband, God rest him, he taught me," she said. "Not the plant names, we knew those already, my family for generations. But he taught me how to speak with the earth, you understand? Not the way some say it, as though it was superstition. No, real speaking. You ask the mountains, 'May I take this plant?' and you wait until you feel an answer.
I was fascinated, I must admit. I asked her how long she spends in the mountains in spring, how many days. "Weeks," she said simply. "I have a small house up near Brasov. There I live from March to May. My daughter thinks I'm mad, but those weeks, then I'm still wholly myself, not yet too old for life." She gestured to different bundles. "This one is St. John's wort, for sadness, for dark thoughts. This delicate one is lady's mantle, for women who get belly pain. And these flowers, see how yellowish they are? That's arnica flowers, stronger even than the leaves." She opened a small linen pouch and showed me the dried flowers, golden, fragile as little gloves for fairies. "A woman in Sibiu, she buys these flowers every year. She's a healer, unofficially, you understand, but her patients know it. I supply her the material, and she makes salves, tinctures, teas." The herb woman leaned back, looked out the window into the darkening landscape. "That's good for me. I'm only the first hand. She's the second hand, who passes the gift along." I asked her which herbs were most difficult to gather, which lasted longest. She laughed softly, reached into her basket, and brought out a dark box. "Yarrow," she said, "is weak and strong at once. Weak because the flowers are so delicate. They turn brown quickly if you're not careful. Strong because a bit of it lasts you the whole winter. My great-grandmother told me, yarrow is the plant of long memory. It doesn't forget why you picked it." She opened the box, and indeed, the scent was intense, herbal, almost sharp. See the coloring? The pink, the white, the yellow mixed? That tells me I picked it rightly in June, in the second week, when the sun is just getting very hot. Most people think drying herbs is simple. You hang them up, wait a few days, done. Foolish. That's like saying making music is simple. You sing a melody, done. She showed me another bundle. These were loosely bound, almost airy. These are the ones that need to dry quickly, less than 3 days, or they lose the best of themselves. Others, like these here, she pointed to a more tightly bound bundle, need time, 1-2 weeks at least. They want to dry slowly, from outside to inside. If you dry them too quickly, the strength stays inside, doesn't come out. She opened the tightly bound bundle, and the scent that came out was twice as strong as the first impression. You see, the patience brought the strength out. The train's rattle became a rhythm of breath between us both. She pulled out a piece of paper with prices written on it, in her crooked handwriting, but orderly. "You see," she said, "the prices aren't very high. That's not for wealth. That's so people can afford to take the healing. Some people think if something's cheap, it's worth less. Foolish. The best things are always the simplest." I asked whether it was difficult to store all these herbs properly, to transport them. "Ah," she said, "that's in my blood. My mother showed me how the air must be, not too damp, not too dry. You notice it when you've listened long enough. I know when a bundle is properly dry just by touching it, and the oils, they evaporate if you're not careful. That's why I must keep them in sealed containers." She tapped her large basket. "This here is from my grandmother, willow withes basket, hand-woven, over 70 years old. The air in this basket, it has smelled 100 springs." We entered the mountains. I could see them, great black silhouettes against the night sky. The herb woman pointed at them. "There, you see? That's down there, not on any map. Those are the places where only the ones I'm looking for grow. There's a basin, very high, over 1,000 meters, where arnica doesn't grow so thick anywhere else. I have to climb for 2 days. Sometimes I'm back at the house on the 3rd day. My knees ache, yes, but then I have what I need." She pulled something else from her basket, a small pouch with dried flowers.
looked at me. "That's for you, a gift. That's mallow petals with a bit of honey, candied. Tastes sweet. Good for the throat, good for the soul. If you chew 3 petals before sleep, your dreams will be sweet." She placed it in my hand, her skin warm and dry like old paper. "You traveling much longer?"
I said yes, still a few hours. She nodded, as though that was exactly right.
"Then eat the petals in an hour, yes? Not now, later." She leaned back, closed her eyes, but she wasn't asleep. She was somewhere else, up there in the mountains, among the herbs, in the early air of spring. I watched her lips move. She was speaking to the mountains, quietly, in a language perhaps only mountains understand.
The night grew deeper. The train traveled through dark valleys, and I sat still, the small pouch of mallow flowers in my hand. The herb woman was truly asleep now, her head resting against the window. I saw her profile, very old, very calm, like a sculpture made of stone and time. And I thought that there are still people like her, who still know what the mountain gives, and who ask respectfully before they take. The mountains were now very close, black guardians of the night, and in them slept millions of plants, waiting for the hands that would gather them with love. My eyes grew heavy, so heavy, as though someone had gently laid a warm hand on my eyelids and said, "Now it's good. Now it's enough for today." And I heard the train, clack, 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 and I heard the quiet breathing of another traveler who'd already fallen asleep. And I heard the distant sound of the wind at the window panes, and all these sounds were like a gentle blanket laid over me, layer after layer, warmth after warmth, until I felt nothing but the train's steady glide through the night. It's raining. Not heavily, not loud, not the way it rains in summer when water just pours down and floods everything. No, this is gentle, steady, a fine, soft rain that wraps the world in a veil of grey and silver. And it sounds on the train roof like 1,000 small fingers tapping on tin. So quiet, you only notice it when you stop listening for other things. It's autumn. One of those quiet autumns where the world withdraws into itself slowly, like an animal settling into its burrow. The leaves are falling, golden and red and copper brown, and they lie on the meadows and pathways like a carpet someone's laid out with great care. Through the train window I see them, the trees, half naked and half dressed up, and the mist lying in the valleys thick and white and still, as though someone stuffed cotton between the hills. And here I am, in a train again, in one of those old trains that smells the way trains ought to smell. Warm metal and ancient wood, and a bit of coffee that someone spilled in the corridor somewhere. My compartment is small and warm. The heating hums quietly beneath the window, and the glass is misted from my breath and the damp the rain's brought. I wipe my sleeve across it and see the landscape, blurred, soft, like viewing it through a watercolor. Fields that are harvested and brown and empty. Farmhouses with smoke rising from their chimneys. A road where nobody's driving. A river that moves slowly, grey, silent. Ta-dum, ta-dum, ta-dum. The rhythm of the rails, my old friend. I know it better than my own voice. It's always there when I depart, no matter where, no matter when, waiting for me like a dog that's thrilled when you come home. Ta-dum, ta-dum. And the rain on the roof, and the heating that hums. 3 sounds that mix and weave together and make a sort of music you won't hear anywhere else. Only in a train. Only on an autumn evening. Only when you've nowhere to be and can forget about time. I made myself a cup of tea before we left. Not from the dining car, but from my own thermos flask, the one I always carry on journeys like this. Black tea with a spoonful of honey. The honey still from a beekeeper I met years ago, whose golden eyes I've never forgotten. The tea is warm and sweet and smells like home, like the kitchen, like the feeling that everything's going to be all right. I hold the cup in both hands and let the warmth move through my fingers, into my wrists, into my arms, until it's traveled through my whole body. Outside, it's growing dark. In autumn, that happens quickly. Just a moment ago, the sky was grey and bright, and now it's dark grey, then dark blue, then black. And the rain keeps falling, invisible now, only audible on the roof. The lights in the train grow warmer, more intimate, as the world outside vanishes. My compartment becomes a little island of light in a sea of darkness. And I'm alone. But I'm not lonely. There's a difference, a real one. And in trains like this, you feel it particularly clearly. We pass a station slowly, without stopping. The lamps on the platform glow orange in the rain, and their reflections shimmer on the wet asphalt like small flames someone's laid on the ground. A man stands beneath the shelter, waiting for another train, hands in his pockets, collar turned up. For a moment, our eyes meet through the misted window, and then he's gone, and the station's gone, and ahead of us, there's nothing but darkness and rain and night. I close my eyes, and they come. The faces, the voices, the people I've met on trains like this, on nights as rainy and as warm and as still as this one. The artists and the craftspeople, the ones who worked with their hands and the ones who saw with their eyes what others missed. The patient ones who knew that nothing worthwhile happens quickly. The solitary ones who'd found something in their solitude more precious than company. So many voices, so much wisdom, kept in my heart like leaves pressed in an old book. Each one of them gave me something I never expected and never need to repay. Words that have nested in my head and my heart, and that come alive again on nights like this, when the rain falls and the train travels, and the world is so still, you can hear the memories ringing, quietly, like raindrops on a train roof. The rain's growing quieter, or my ears are growing more tired. The tea's nearly finished, one last sip, lukewarm and sweet, and the cup sits now on the little table beside the misted window, where I see my face reflected, blurred and soft, like the face of someone who's remembering. My shoulders sink deeper, my hands lie heavy on my knees, and the voices come, over the rain and the rattle, quiet and warm and familiar, one after the other, like leaves falling from a tree. And I let them come and let them go, and the rain sings me toward sleep, and the autumn covers me with its golden leaves, slowly, silently, warmly. On this generic night train line, on the way to a station whose name I no longer speak, I travel through the last hours of night. It is the hour when night ends, but day has not yet begun.
The hour between light and darkness, between dream and reality. The hour of arrival, which is also a farewell, which is also a beginning, which is also an ending. An hour that exists only for me, only for you, only for those who read this and understand. And I think, as the train rolls on, that this night, this long, wonderful night, is over. That all the stories I've told you, that they now have entered your heart, that they are yours, that they are part of your dream, and your dream is my dream, and my dream is your life. And perhaps that is the essence of a train journey, the truth of a night train story, that in the end there is no separation, that you and I, that we were together on this journey, that we all are together in this motion, in this eternal travel that never ends but only rests between breath and breath.
The sky is still dark, but not black anymore. It is dark blue, almost purple, almost a promise of light, a whisper of hope, an echo of a promise made long ago. And the windows of the train, they no longer show complete darkness, but shadows, shapes of trees, the silhouette of a house very far away, windows with lights in which people sleep as I will soon sleep, a hint of life that still sleeps but will soon awaken when the sun comes, when night goes. And I imagine all these people sleeping in their beds, in their houses, and I pass by, still, quietly, like a ghost, like a dream. And perhaps they dream of me too, or of this train, of this night, of this magic that connects everyone, even if we don't know that we're connected. And when they wake, they'll have a moment where they remember this night, even though they weren't here, and they'll feel that they nonetheless were on this journey, that the boundaries between sleep and waking, between dream and reality, they're not as fixed as we think, that everything is connected in this great night, in this great journey. And I am tired now. My eyes are heavy, my thoughts are heavy, like lead, like water, like everything that longs to sink. But I'm also refreshed. I'm also revived. This night, on this train, it has taken everything from me. My worries, my rush, my fear of arriving. It has taken everything from me and then given everything. Stillness, rest, understanding, the feeling of being home, even in this motion, even in this being underway. I am richer now than I ever was. The station comes slowly, ever more slowly, like an arrival in life, not suddenly, but gradually, like a dream slowly fading, like the night slowly yielding, like my heart slowly ceasing to beat, or beating faster. I don't know anymore what's right. The train brakes gently, and I feel that something ends. This journey, this night, this magical time when everything was possible, when I could be everything, when I had to be nothing, except present, except there, except breathing. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that it's hard to find words. Because gratitude, it is silent. It sits in the heart, it sits in the eyes, it sits everywhere, where love sits. And I love this train. I love this night. I love
all the people I don't know, but whose stories are now my stories. And I also love you, who hears this, who shared this night with me. Because that is what this journey is, a sharing, a connecting. A moment when strangers become brothers and sisters, when loneliness becomes community, when night becomes home for those who listen, for those whose hearts are open to this old, wonderful music, the music of endless rails, of eternal night.
But arrival, it's not the end. Arrival, it's only a new beginning, another beginning, a beginning I don't know. The train stops, and the windows become doors, and the darkness becomes light. And I must go. I must step out into the new world, into the new day, into the new life that awaits me, that calls me. But I take this night, I take this silence, I take this feeling of security, of home, of truth with me. It sits now somewhere in my soul, so deep, so real, that it will never leave. And I know that wherever I go, that I will always be on this train, that I will always hear these wheels in my heart, day and night, always. And every step I take on this earth, it will be a rattle, a rhythm, a song, an echo from this night. And as the train comes to a complete stop, as the lights brighten, as the door opens and morning begins, as the first sun rises over the station, I understand that I have arrived. I have arrived not at the station, but at myself, at my own dream, at my own place that is everywhere and nowhere, but mostly here, in the warmth of this train, in the darkness of this night, just before day comes, at the moment of transition, in this golden hour. And my eyes, they open slowly, and I see the platform and the people waiting. And I wonder if they too are in a dream, if they too are just waking from a long night where everything was possible, or if they are still sleeping while I leave. And perhaps it doesn't matter. Perhaps we're all sleeping and awake at once. Perhaps that is life. And now, as I wake, as the night truly passes, as my eyes open to this new day, to this new moment, I carry the memory of all the stories, of all the people, of all the moments of this long, precious night. And I know that I will come back, that I will always come back to this train, to this night, to this silence, where I truly belong, where I truly woke in my deepest sleep, that was no sleep, but a revelation, a truth, a homecoming. And I think of the innkeeper, of the locomotive with its name, of the window that shows yesterday, of the silence between tunnels, and of all the others I didn't meet, but whose hearts I feel in the motion of this train. And I know that they all are still traveling, that they all continue their journey in the night, without arriving, because traveling itself
is arrival.
And when I step off this train, when my feet touch the earth again,
I will understand that I never really left, that I will always travel in my heart, in my dreams. On every night, when I close my eyes, I will travel back to this train, and the story will begin anew. Always new, always different, always the same. And everyone who shared this night with me, they too will travel in their own trains, in their own nights. And somewhere where rails cross, we will meet again, not in the same night perhaps, not at the same time, but in the same truth, that we're all on the way, that we're all traveling home, that we've all already arrived without knowing it.
And the lights grow brighter, and the night fades, and I open my eyes, refreshed, awake. Come home, beloved, forever.